I'm like the last person to review this movie. So that being said, let's talk about it.
Shall we?
So Justice League is the latest film within the DC Extended Universe in which all of our main heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg finally team up to go against Steppenwolf. Alright guys, so let's get into Justice League. So I think it's safe to say that the DCEU has had quite a rough patch in these recent years. I mean, I loved Man of Steel, didn't quite love Batman v Superman, though I did like it. And while I can admit that Suicide Squad isn't really a great film, I like Suicide Squad, okay? I know I gave it a 4 out of 5, but upon rewatches, it's like a 3 out of 5 for me now. But Wonder Woman I absolutely loved, and I was getting excited about Justice League the more and more it was getting closer to release. And I gotta tell you guys, I've seen Justice League finally, and it was a really good time. I mean, seriously, who is excited about all these guys coming together to finally get in a team-up movie? Seriously. Ben Affleck is an amazing Batman. I want him to keep coming back as Batman. I don't want him to hang up that costume at all. I think it's one of the best ever. Gal Gadot always is a scene stealer as Wonder Woman. But really, let's get to the newcomers you guys want to hear about, who are Ezra Miller as The Flash, Jason Momoa as Aquaman, and Ray Fisher as Cyborg. But really, out of all three of them, Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa were the ones who I loved seeing the most. Out of the three of them, really, The Flash was my favorite character the entire film. He brought so much comedy, and not just that. When you saw him in the Speed Force, it was some of the coolest parts of the entire film. I love The Flash's awkward humor. Every time that the cast had such a great banter going on, The Flash would always say the most perfect line that would have me dying. I loved Jason Momoa as Aquaman. I loved his attitude. I loved how laid back he was. And whenever he fought, it looked amazing. But of all the newcomers in Justice League, I am looking forward to seeing Aquaman the very most in a solo film coming out next year. Now, Cyborg was one of who I was really skeptical about, because I had heard things from people saying he was the weakest link. And I gotta disagree with that, because I think that Cyborg, out of all the characters, actually had the most of a story arc in this film. And not to mention that, he also had some great moments in this film. A lot of moments that I wish were in the film from the trailers. But really, if I were to say the strongest point of this film, it's the cast and their banter. It was so entertaining, and seeing them all on screen at the same time had me smiling from beginning to end of this film. One thing I did like about this movie, which is also a comment which I'll get to later, is how fast-paced this movie is. This movie, from start to finish, is just go with the entertainment value. I cannot deny I was entertained throughout this movie, despite how things were when it came to the storytelling. Now, one of the things I loved about Justice League was how it looked. Now, the cinematographer of this film was Fabian Wagner. He also worked on Game of Thrones, which is one of my favorite TV shows ever. Fabian Wagner brings such a stylistic look to Justice League, and his cinematography was one of the reasons why I was constantly entertained by this movie. But that's really when there wasn't so much green screen in this film, which again, I'll get to later. And the action scenes were a lot of fun to watch. There's one specific scene that involved the 4 guys on the team and Superman. That was probably my favorite scene in the entire film. If Zack Snyder is great at anything, he makes beautifully filmed action, and once again in Justice League, he proves that he can film some great action scenes. For the most part, this movie is very funny, with The Flash and Aquaman bringing most of the laughs. As much as I enjoy Justice League, guys, this movie is a pretty flawed film, I have to say. Now, my biggest flaw with Justice League isn't just one part of the film, but it's the fact that the entire film feels rushed. Not just from a story standpoint, but from the character standpoint. Now, of course, we've had Man of Steel, we've had Wonder Woman, and we've had Batman v Superman to kind of flesh out the first 3 characters, but when it comes to characters like Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Ezra Miller as The Flash, and Ray Fisher as Cyborg, these 3 characters aren't really given much to develop, to be honest. From what I've read behind the scenes, there was so much more footage in this movie. Joss Whedon was brought on board after Zack Snyder left due to some very personal reasons, which I understand after reading them. But apparently after Joss Whedon had finished cutting the film at first, Warner Brothers told him that he had to cut the film down from what I believe was almost a 3-hour film, which I would have loved to have seen, to a 2-hour film. Now, to a point it does work because of how fast-paced and entertaining it was, but at the same time, it gives it such a rushed feeling that there's really no time to flesh out almost anything. Like for example, Cyborg, even though his character didn't have the most of a character arc in this film, nonetheless, there was a lot that was glossed over in this film. So Warner Brothers, my biggest critique goes to you guys, because you guys are the reason why this film feels so rushed, so shame on you guys. Now, one of my other biggest flaws with this film was the villain Steppenwolf. Now, I'm only going to compare the DCU with the MCU this one time in this review. I get it, the MCU hasn't had the greatest villains all the time, but Steppenwolf is one of the worst comic book villains I have ever seen. Not only do his motivations just feel so basic, but his CG, oh my god. I mean, Syrian Fiennes, I believe his name is, his voice works with the character, but when it comes to his motivation, Steppenwolf comes off as such a generic and just a basic plotline comic villain. And not just Steppenwolf CG, but for the most part, this was a horrible looking film in terms of CG. Now, the thing that blows my mind is that Justice League, from what I saw, is a $300 million budgeted film. I'm gonna repeat that again. $300 million for a budget, and somehow the CG is very choppy. Some of it looks unfinished even. Blade Runner 2049, one of my favorite films of the year, is about $119 million less for a cost of Justice League, and that film is some of the best CG I have ever seen. And I mean, not just from some of the wide shots, but Cyborg CG especially looked bad. When you didn't see the actual full body of Cyborg, it looked fine, but when I saw the entire body of Cyborg, there were a lot of times where the CG felt unfinished. And I know some people are bringing up the fact that Henry Cavill had kind of a weird mouth. I didn't really notice it, to be honest, because I wasn't looking for it. I mean, maybe I guess one scene or two was just like, it looks kind of bad, but to be honest, I didn't really notice it. But for the most part, the CG minus the Flash's Speed Force looked pretty bad for a $300 million budgeted film. And I think another huge missed opportunity was the score by Danny Elfman. Yeah, Danny Elfman's score was not that memorable, which really surprised me, because Danny Elfman has done some of the most memorable scores in film history. I mean, he did the original score for Batman, the 1989 version, and somehow his score in this film just, I don't know, it's just, nothing about it just ranked awesome. It just came off as just subpar, to be honest with you guys. Overall, guys, while it does sound like I complained a lot about Justice League, I still came out of the film really enjoying it. The banter between the cast is great, the action scenes are very enjoyable, despite there being a lot of flaws, but nonetheless, after seeing Justice League, I do want to see what the future of the DCEU holds for us. So overall, guys, I'm going to give Justice League a 3.75 out of 5. Despite the flaws I had with this film, I had a great time with Justice League, and I do want to see the future film, specifically Aquaman. Bring me that movie right now. I cannot wait for Aquaman. Alright guys, so I realize that this film is like days late, but guys, please comment down, let me know below, what did you guys think of Justice League? Did you love Justice League? Did you hate it? Were you disappointed about it? Please let me know below. If you guys want to follow me on social media, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and I'm also on Snapchat, so if you guys want to follow me on all those social media platforms, all the links and the usernames are in the description below. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Justice League. If so, please hit that like button and share and subscribe to see more reviews just like this one. If you guys want to see my review of Lady Bird, please click right here. And if you guys want to see my review of Murder on the Orient Express, please click right here. And of course, until the next review, I will see you guys next time.